Hi everyone. Today I am talking about types of stele and stellar evolution in pteridophytes. Stele is the central cylinder or core of vascular tissue in higher plants and pteridophytes. The central cylinder or core of vascular tissue consisting of xylem, phloem, pericycle and sometimes medullary ray and pith is technically called as a stele. The term stele was first used by Van Tighem and Dolliet in 1886 in their stellar theory. They used the term stele in a collective sense and mentioned that the stele is not only made up of xylem and phloem, but tissues like pericycle, vascular rays and pith are also associated with it. According to them, the cortex and the stele is the fundamental part of a shoot and both these parts are separated from each other by endodermis. This is actually the basis for the stellar theory. Van Tighem and Dolliet explained only 3 types of stele, but collectively in pteridophytes there are 6 different types of steles. They are the Protostele, Siphonostele, Solenostele, Dictyostele, Polycyclic stele and Eustele. Thus, there are 6 different types of stele in the case of pteridophytes. Coming on to the Protostele, the Protostele is a primitive type of stele and it consists of a central xylem core, and the central xylem core is surrounded by the phloem. That is, the pith is totally absent in the case of Protostele. So, it can be defined as a xylem surrounded by the phloem. Okay, the Protostele is divided into 4 different types. They are the haplostele, actinostele, plectostele and a mixed protostele. This division is based on the nature of xylem present in a protostele. Coming on to the different types of protostele, first one is the haplostele. This haplostele is commonly seen in Lycopodium. In the haplostele, the central region is occupied by the xylem, that is, this is the xylem, and xylem in turn is surrounded by the phloem. But here the xylem is with a smooth wall. Look into the picture. The xylem is with a smooth wall. The xylem is smooth. And this type of stele is known as the haplostele. Now, the second one, the actinostele. This is seen in the xylotum, seen in xylotum. In actinostele, the xylem is with radiating walls. See this, radiating wall, or it is star shaped. Here also, this is with a radiating wall and is star shaped. This type of stele is known as the actinostele. Here also the pith is absent and the central region is occupied by the xylem, and xylem in turn is surrounded by the phloem. Then comes the plectostele. Here, the xylem is arranged in the form of plates, different parallelly arranged plates, and is surrounded by the phloem. Here also, the xylem is arranged in the form of different plates, and this type of arrangement is known as, this type of stele is known as the plectostele. The plectostele is also commonly seen in Lycopodium. Then comes the fourth type of stele, mixed protostele. Mixed protostele. In the case of mixed protostele, the xylem is broken down into different small units, and these small units are dispersed. This is the xylem, this is xylem. Okay, small units of xylem is dispersed in phloem. This type of arrangement is known as a mixed protostele. Here also the pith is totally absent. See this. These are the small xylem units. This is xylem. This is xylem, small groups of xylem, and the xylem in turn surrounded by the phloem. This is also seen in Lycopodium. These are the 4 different types of protostele in pteridophytes. They are the haplostele, actinostele, plectostele, and a mixed protostele. Now coming on to the second type of stele, the Siphonostele. The Siphonostele is medullated protostele. Siphonostele is called as medullated protostele. That is, the central region is occupied by pith. Pith in turn is surrounded by the xylem. Xylem in turn is surrounded by the phloem. This type of arrangement is known as the Siphonostele. Siphonostele is also divided into 2 types, ectofloic siphonostele and amphifloic siphonostele. Ectofloic siphonostele and amphifloic siphonostele. Now, coming on to the origin of a siphonostele, there are 2 theories to explain the origin of siphonostele. First one is the interstellar origin of pith, also known as modification theory, and the second one is extrastellar origin of pith or the invasion theory. Now, the first one, modification theory. And according to the modification theory proposed by Boodle in 1901, xylem strands in the protostele, some of the xylem in the protostele is modified into a pith. That is, the xylem at the central region is modified into the pith. This is known as the modification theory. Now, the second one, extrastellar origin of pith or the invasion theory. And according to this theory, the cortical cell having the parenchymatous cell, is invaginated into the xylem, to form a pith. Invagination or invasion of the parenchymatous cell in the cortical region to the central region of the vascular cylinder. This is known as the extrastellar origin of pith or the invasion theory. Now, coming on to different types of siphonostele. First one is the ectofloic siphonostele and second one is the amphifloic siphonostele. In the case of ectofloic siphonostele, the central region is occupied by the pith. This is the pith. Central region occupied by the pith. Then the pith is surrounded by the xylem in turn surrounded by the phloem. This type of arrangement is known as the ectofloic siphonostele. That is, the phloem is seen outside the xylem. This is seen in the case of Osmunda. Now, coming on to the second type of Siphonostele, amphiploic Siphonostele, seen in Marsilia rhizome. Seen in Marsilia rhizome. In the case of amphiploic Siphonostele, you can see two groups of phloem, that is the outer phloem and the inner phloem. Two groups of phloem, outer phloem, this is the outer phloem and this is the inner ring of the phloem. That is, xylem is surrounded by the phloem and inside the xylem there is a ring of phloem. This type of arrangement is called as amphiploic arrangement and the central region is occupied by the pitta. This type of stele is known as amphiploic Siphonostele. Now, coming on to third type of stele, Solenostele. It is defined as a Siphonostele perforated with a leaf gap and a corresponding leaf base. This is known as a solenostele, that is a Siphonostele perforated with a leaf gap and a corresponding leaf base. So, in the case of solenostele, the central region is occupied by the pitta. The pitta is surrounded by the xylem and the xylem in turn is surrounded by the phloem. That is, the central region occupied by pitta, pitta in turn surrounded by the xylem, this is the xylem, and xylem in turn surrounded by the phloem. Here, there will be a leaf gap and a leaf trace. This is the leaf trace and this area is the leaf gap. This type of stele is known as solenostele, that is a Siphonostele with a leaf gap and a corresponding leaf trace. This type of stele is known as solenostele. The solenostele is also divided into two different types. The ectoploic solenostele and amphiploic solenostele. Ectoploic solenostele and amphiploic solenostele. Here comes the ectoploic solenostele. Ectoploic solenostele. This is commonly seen in Osmunda rhizome. Here, the central region is occupied by the pitta. This is the pitta. Pitta in turn surrounded by the xylem. Xylem in turn surrounded by the phloem. And there will be a leaf gap and a leaf trace. Here also, the central region is occupied by the pitta, pitta in turn surrounded by the xylem, xylem in turn surrounded by the phloem, and there will be a leaf gap and a leaf trace. This type of arrangement is known as ectoploic solenostele. Then comes the amphiploic solenostele. In the case of amphiploic solenostele, the central region is occupied by the pitta, pitta in turn surrounded by the inner phloem. This is the inner phloem, and inner phloem in turn surrounded by the xylem, xylem in turn again surrounded by the outer phloem. This type of arrangement, and this is also having a leaf trace and a leaf gap. This type of arrangement is known as amphiploic Siphonostele, and this amphiploic Siphonostele is commonly seen in adiantum. Look into this picture. The centrally occupied pitta. This is the centrally occupied pitta. centrally occupied pitta. Pitta in turn surrounded by this phloem. This green colored region is the phloem. Then phloem in turn surrounded by the xylem. Xylem in turn again surrounded by the phloem. This is the leaf gap. Now, coming on to the fourth type of stele, that is Dictyostele. See this, Dictyostele. Remember, in the case of Solenostele, it is a type of Siphonostele with a single leaf gap and a leaf trace. But in the case of Dictyostele, there is numerous leaf gap, that is overlapping leaf gaps and leaf traces. This is one leaf trace. Again, these are the leaf traces and these are the leaf gaps. So, in the case of a Dictyostele, there will be numerous overlapping leaf traces and leaf gaps and corresponding leaf traces. Here, the individual units of the vascular cylinder is known as meristele. These are the individual vascular cylinders, and these vascular cylinders are known as meristele. Meristele. So, in the case of Dictyostele, numerous meristele along with the corresponding leaf gap and leaf trace is arranged in the form of a ring. This type of arrangement is known as the Dictyostele. This is commonly seen in the case of Pteris rhizome. Then, the fifth type of stele, the polycyclic stele. In the case of polycyclic stele, numerous vascular cylinders are arranged in the cyclic manner. This is a vascular cylinder arranged in the center, and this is this one, the second cylinder surrounding the first cylinder. This type of arrangement is known as polycyclic stele. And here, in the case of polycyclic stele, if the outer cylinder is a siphonostele, this is a siphonostele, a solenostele, that is with a single leaf gap and a leaf trace. If the outer cycle is a siphonostele, the solenostele, this type is known as polycyclic siphonostele. If the outer ring is the different meristeles along with the numerous overlapping leaf gaps and leaf traces. This type of polycyclic stele is known as polycyclic Dictyostele. Now comes the sixth type of stele, Eustele. This is seen in ecusystem. In the Eustele, numerous conjoined collateral vascular bundles, xylem and phloem arranged side by side. This is the phloem and this is the xylem. Numerous conjoined collateral vascular cylinders are arranged in the form of a ring. This type of arrangement is known as the Eustele. See this. These are the conjoined collateral vascular cylinders. Thus, there are 6 different types of stele: the protostele, siphonostele, solenostele, dictyostele, polycyclic stele and eustele. Among this, the protostele is divided into 4 different types. They are haplostele, actinostele, plectostele and mixed protostele. Siphonostele divided into 2 types, amphiploic siphonostele and ectoploic siphonostele. Solenostele divided into 2 types, that is amphiploic solenostele and ectofloic Siphonostele. In the case of polycyclic stele, if the outer ring is a Dictyostele, this is known as polycyclic Dictyostele, and the outer ring, if the outer ring is a Solenostele, this is known as polycyclic Solenostele. Thus, there are 6 different types of stele in the case of Pteridophytes. Here, I will explain one more type of stele, Atactostele. Atactostele, Atactostele. This type of stele is seen in monocotyledons. Here, numerous conjoined collateral vascular bundles are seen scattered like this. Numerous conjoined collateral vascular bundles. This is seen in monocotyledons. Now, coming on to the stellar evolution. In stellar evolution, the protostele is considered as the most primitive type of stele. The protostele is considered as the most primitive type of stele. And from the protostele, all other stele are evolved. Now, the protostele, the xylem in the protostele undergo reduction producing star-shaped pattern of xylem, and this type of stele is known as actinostele. Then the xylem again undergo reduction producing plate-like structures and it forms the plectostele. The xylem again undergo reduction or the xylem is broken up producing the mixed protostele. Thus, from the protostele, the actinostele, plectostele and later the mixed protostele is derived. And this line of evolution is known as Lycopsid line of evolution. Lycopsid line of evolution and is proposed by Zimmermann. Now, origin of pith in the protostele is another very significant evolutionary change that is explained by modification theory and invasion theory. As a result of appearance of pith, the protostele becomes siphonostele. It may be the amphiploic siphonostele or ectofloic siphonostele, leading to the development of the Dictyostele or the Atactostele through the production of the leaf gaps and the leaf traces. This is all about the evolution of stele or the stellar evolution. Happy learning and thank you all.